Welcome to another episode of the Trusted Advisor podcast and video series powered by the Retail Solutions Providers Association. Our goal on the pod is to accelerate the success of today's and tomorrow's leaders in the retail IT industry. I'm Jim Roddy, back with you again. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, our goal is to accelerate the success of today's and tomorrow's leaders. And for this episode, we're going to discuss key skills every channel leader needs through a highly popular format we call Battle of the Channel Stars. Our discussion today will be divided into 6 segments with separate but related topics. Our 2 guests will share their perspective on each topic, and then I will join in on the discussion. And then here's where it gets fun. At the end of each segment, I'll award a point to who I believe made the best case, stated their points most clearly, shared the most compelling anecdotes, laughed at my jokes the most. And so you might be thinking, well, that gives you a heck of a lot of leeway in terms of deciding who gets the point or not. But, you know, I consider it, this is my casino, my rules. We'll have a lot of latitude. We'll have a lot of fun. We're going to keep track of the points using a scoreboard. For those folks who are watching on our YouTube channel, you can see the incredible state-of-the-art scoreboard that we have set up for you. It integrates all the new technologies, AI, IoT, LED, it's solar powered. And I know you might be asking, but yes, it is street legal, but it is definitely a pilot that we're testing here. So at the end of the episode, whoever earns more points is declared that episode's gold medalist, while the other participant is the silver medalist. You might say we'll have a winner and a loser, but to me, there are no losers in the RSPA. We're going to have a gold medalist and a silver medalist. If after all of the segments, the score is tied, we'll go into overtime with bonus questions to determine who gets gold and who gets silver. So that's how we play Battle of the Channel Stars. We'll have a meaningful conversation in a fun framework. All right, let's meet our 2 contestants. First, Steve Silberman is a point of sale specialist for RSPA VAR member, Mercantile Process Inc., or MPI for short. Steve has been a member of the MPI team for 4.5 years and also served as a company's VP of National POS Strategy. He also worked for Zephyr Hardware as a sales and support manager and for ISV Lavu as a POS specialist working with resellers. Today, Steve also serves as a member of the RSPA membership committee. Steve, great to have you as a guest today.
Jim, thank you very much. I am truly appreciative to be part of this, and I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
Thrilled to have you here. And so Steve and I, our paths have crossed many times. First, we were talking before we hit record in person at a Lavu conference in Albuquerque. And one of the great things I like about Steve, the reasons our paths have crossed is because he's a lifelong learner, right? Consuming the webinars, consuming the podcasts, the white papers, things like that. So Steve, nice to have you as a lifelong learner, and you can be a teacher here starting on the pod.
I certainly hope so. Thank you very much.
Sure, thank you. Our second contestant is Stacy Carrillo, a 6-year veteran of North American Bancard. Stacy started at NAB as a POS channel manager, and today he's the Senior Business Development Director for NAB's Integrated Payments Division. Stacy's a longtime supporter of the RSPA, and today serves as the chair of the RSPA Education Committee. Great to talk with you, Stacy.
Likewise, fist bump to everybody.
Beautiful. And Stacy, I have to give you credit because you really sparked this format. I don't know if you remember, before Inspire 2020, we were talking about different ideas, and you said, how can we integrate gamification? And we did that to a degree at that Inspire event. And I thought, well, how can we integrate that gamification into the podcast here? And so I guess you are to Battle the Channel Stars what Dr. James Naismith was to basketball. So good luck today. Again, you should have a home court advantage here.
A heavy mantle, but thank you. And I'm pretty sure I took the idea from somebody else, but you know, you got to put it somewhere.
Well, as a friend of mine who hosts a podcast says, the first I'll steal an idea from somebody, the first time I'll give them credit, but the remaining times I'm going to own it myself and take credits for it. So feel free to take credit.
Yeah, that's like the guy who hits the foul ball. The guy who hits the foul ball runs off his hands, the next guy gets it. It's the guy who's got all the bruises and never gets the ball.
That's exactly right. Bruised hands and drops his beer. So, hey, so before we begin the battle, just to set the stage for our listeners, can each of you give about 30 seconds on where your organization fits in the channel? Steve, if you can go first.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. MPI POS is a division of Mercantile Processing Incorporated, registered ISO for the last 16 years. The POS team provides end-to-end point of sale solutions for the restaurant and retail industries. We take a processor agnostic approach to POS, which has led to a strong partner channel and also multiple bank relationships. And I'm Steve Silberman, and I've been in the POS industry for 10 years.
Wonderful. No, glad to have you here. And Stacy, tell us about NAB.
Sure. We're a technology company in the payment space, primarily for RSPA purposes. We have many members who use our EPX platform. It's a true end-to-end platform here in the US to integrate payments. And we like to believe we do things very well. And we've been very appreciative of all of the support and all the connections that the RSPA provides. So I do very much appreciate being here.
Sure, thank you guys. And all right, let's play Battle of the Channel Stars. The niceties are out of the way. It's time for us to do a virtual arm wrestling match here. So again, our focus for today is key skills every channel leader needs. And so what I'm going to do is I'll mention a key skill. Steve and Stacy will share their perspective on that skill. We'll have a brief discussion, and then I will award the point for that round. Again, you get points for being specific, being unique, insightful. Flattering or insulting the host is not so good, unless it's such a spectacular insult that you will get bonus points for that. So, all right. So, Steve, why don't you start us off? The first topic of sales and business development. What would be your take on that? What would you want to share with our listeners and viewers?
Of course. Thank you very much. My philosophy in the POS industry has always surrounded the idea that there is more than enough room for everyone to coexist. And I know that may not be popular, and certainly my more competitive colleagues might be fundamentally opposed to that idea. However, a partner-focused mindset has allowed MPI to grow our channel year over year, and it has been the core of my approach to business development from the very start of my career. I have seen firsthand how successful this can be. I am reminded of a quote of a certain moderator of the Trusted Advisor podcast who's been known to throw around this phrase, which is "a rising tide lifts all boats," which I couldn't agree more. Even if it means giving up a portion of the business in order to build strong relationships with other industry professionals, that has been a small sacrifice, which has led to incredible returns. I'll add two very quick other points in regards to sales. Both fall under the most basic of sales skills. Whether you are the VP of business development or a brand new salesperson, I believe that these skills can often be a litmus test to determine if you are going to be successful in sales in general. The very first is going to be from my first mentor in the industry, Steve Brown, who always drilled into my very being, follow up, follow up, follow up. And I'm sure he would want me to say again, follow up, follow up, follow up. It's that important. The second skill, and perhaps even more important, is just asking for the business. I have never believed in shady closing techniques or forcing customers to make those types of decisions. And my father often said when I was growing up that the squeaky wheel gets the oil. And I like to say, if you don't ask, the answer is always no. So I think that rings true here in that whether you're focusing on closing a single mom and pop boutique retail shop or a multi-location national chain restaurant, you have to ask for the business. Thank you.
Fabulous. All right, Stacy, what's your take on sales and business development? What would you share?
Yeah, and this really, it's a segue from what Steve was saying. I, growing up as a child of the 90s, just to kind of date myself a little bit, I remember a movie, the movie Romeo and Juliet, Leonardo DiCaprio and Claire Danes, if you remember that. And there was a song that went with that movie. It was by Baz Luhrmann. And don't be afraid to wear sunscreen or whatever the name of the song was. But what I remember from that song, I wake up every day and it's do something every day that scares you. And it was one of the pieces of advice that I truly try to apply in what I'm doing in sales, because it can be hard to get up and pick up the phone and get going your motion. You wonder what that person on the other end, when it's a cold call, is gonna be like. You wonder if you feel like you're interrupting them. And I think as the older we get, the more we kind of take those experiences where we don't like to be bothered, right? We're in the middle of dinner and somebody's coming to the door. I think what we have to remember is to put that aside. And when you make that phone call, remember that you're there to help them. And more times than not, and I can honestly say that, whether it's our what we do, whether it's approach, whether it's my humility that I try to put first and foremost, whatever it is, and maybe even more so the person on the other end, I usually get that respect and thank of that, and thanks for the phone call. Now, whether or not it goes anywhere, not as concerned about that. The fact that you get it going, and like anything in gym, you can attest from your athletic days that you just gotta get out there and break the seal and start that first sprint, and then the rest of it just kind of follows. And before you know it, you're into it for an hour. You broke a sweat. You feel great. And your feelings come from the results of that. Again, whether something progressed, you had a nice conversation, you learned something.
Yeah, the most important step in a marathon is the first one. I'm looking, for those of watching on YouTube, I'm looking, both of you are talking about a book that I just finished reading called The Serving Mindset, where it talked about if you talk about serving and helping, you'll never sell ever, right? You're always just looking, how can I help? How can I help? And if it's a good fit, it's a good fit. I want to ask both of you if you can quickly follow up. Steve, you brought up about, follow up. And so I want to ask both of you quickly, how do you do that and not be annoying? Because both of you guys are really nice guys, right? That's part of the reason why I invited you on here. You're among the nicest salespeople I've ever engaged with, nicest business development people who I ever engaged with. So Steve, what do you do? And then Stacy, what do you do from a follow-up with, still keeping the person having a positive view of you?
Certainly, sure. I appreciate that very much. A long time ago, I read, I think it takes between 6 and 14 touches in order to close a deal. And those touches come in many different forms. So it is important to have a variety of follow-ups and not just be singular where you're just calling and leaving voicemails, or even if you're connecting. When you do follow up, you need to be prepared in advance so you know what you're going to say. I do believe in preparation quite heavily, and you never want to just call just to touch in. I think an Art Sobchak quote or something said, just stop touching your customers. They don't want to be touched. And that's the truth, right? You want to bring value to each conversation. So in addition, variety is important. So we have many means of communicating. We have, of course, I do love email. I love phone calls. Nothing beats an in-person as well, if it's appropriate. And you do also want to respect that the person on the other side, whether it's a partner or a customer, they are busy and they have their own priorities. So I don't like to be overly aggressive, but if I am providing them with a valuable service that is actually going to benefit them, build their business, make things more efficient, increase revenue, I know it's important that I get in front of them. So you have to follow that kind of that tightrope, so to speak. But as long as you get to the other end, that's all that matters.
Great, thank you. Stacy, how do you follow up in a nice but persistent manner?
Yeah, I think it somewhat touches on what Steve said. It's not so much about just the touch, it's about the value of that. And when you're following up, I think the old days of, hey, I'm just checking in, and maybe sometimes that is necessary because they said, hey, give me a call at whatever time. And along with that, try to set that next time where they're expecting you, whether it's a day or a week when you end that first call. Try to remember to do that because they've then given you that invitation. And if you're a professional, oftentimes you're going to honor what you've said, and you're going to take that call or respond to that email. And sometimes you get busy, and that's not always the case. But back to the value, it's giving them another and adding to the reason. So, for instance, if we've given them, all the reasons in that first call or second call after discovery, and we've laid it all out there, now we're following up. Reiterate one of those benefits and how it translates to a return on investment. Just a very simple, whether it's email or phone call. Hey, I just want to remind you that this is going on. The cost of waiting. Maybe you can throw that out there. But it doesn't just have to be, hey, I'm just checking in. What's the decision? Bring a value and bring a reason for a response, and evoke that response.
Wonderful. Both great answers. I really like the specifics. I took some notes. I am giving Steve, I'm awarding Steve the point. Oh my gosh, kudos. I have this backwards, so I have to flip it around. But I'm giving Steve the point for that. Again, this state-of-the-art scoreboard still, it's in test, it's in beta phase, so that's why we have things we need to work on. But Steve, I really like the whole, like you said, follow up. It reminds me when I talk with resellers, there's one in Chicago, and all that he does is he just keeps stopping by, right? He just keeps checking in no matter what, just to see how somebody's doing. And at some point, they're going to need him sooner or later, whether it's, you know, a month down the road or years down the road. So, all right, both points, both good points, but the official point goes to Steve. All right, the next skill that all channel leaders need is customer service, but we want to talk about it in a proactive format because we're going to talk about, you know, after that, troubleshooting, which is reactive customer service. So, Stacy, what would be your top of the chart advice or guidance to our listeners related to proactive customer service?
I think a lot of that is making sure that you follow up on what you said you were going to do from the beginning, and assuring that if you laid out several benefits or several things that you committed to do, that you are following up and checking in to be sure that you are meeting those expectations. Because ultimately, we know how difficult it is to find a new customer. Obviously, retaining that customer is much more in your interest, and it's such an easier phone call to an existing, you know, back to the cold calling. It's so much easier to call an existing customer when things aren't obviously on awesome terms, as they should be. Not always, but as they should be. So you want to avoid those. So again, following up and making sure that you are meeting the expectations that you set out, and that's coming to truth.
Great, thank you. Steve, your take on proactive customer service.
Sure. Stacy, what a phenomenal response. And I couldn't agree with that more. I think we both would say we're firm believers in proactivity, right? I liken this to preparing for a wrestling match when I was a very young athlete in high school. I would work with my coaches and my other teammates to prepare for whoever my next opponent was. We would study film if possible, or at least just get more information about them. And we would prepare an offensive and defensive strategy. So by the time that I got on the mat and before the whistle blew, I had relentlessly practiced which moves I was planning to use, which greatly improved my chances of winning. Now, I'm not a wrestling star by any means, but I did have some success, and preparation was key. So when it comes to customer service, I liken this to education and instilling extensive education within your employees and your staff, training them to be professional in general, and making sure they understand what their role is within the organization and what the roles are with the others in the organization. Learning our products to a high level of competency, and knowing who our partners are and who the key players are at those partners organizations. On a business development standpoint, I think you have to prepare for growth as well, which does help with customer service because you can do things like building systems to allow for scalability. You can create templates to increase efficiency, which is something I know you have written in several articles in the past, and using technology to streamline communications and organize your data. From a sales perspective, reaching out, like Stacy had said, right, being proactive, reaching out to your partners or to your customers when new features are available or new products have come out, or even just changes within their system, is a great touch point for anyone that you're reaching out to, and it does tend to also result in additional sales opportunities. I am a believer not in just proactivity, but customer service is an arm of sales, and sales is also an arm of customer service. Thank you.
Well said. Yeah, they are not separate things, right? You can't be siloing your business and say, well, here's how one group treats our customers, and then they're totally segmented from another one. Great point there. I am going to give the point here to Stacy because what he said really resonates and reflects what we've heard on some of our calls that we've had lately. You know, like the RSPA Marketing Committee. It was Thomas Greenman from Skurla's up in Anchorage, Alaska, talked about the fundamentals, right? Not, you know, like have that automation, have that preparation like that you talked about, Steve. But you've got to make sure you as a human being follow up and follow through on your commitments and check in and see how people are doing. So, you know, make sure that you're setting clear expectations. Make sure when you're setting those expectations, you're recapping the conversation, and then write it down and send it over to the person. And that way everybody knows that they're on the same page. I was actually just talking to somebody about that yesterday. So Stacy, you got the point. Anything else you'd want to add in terms of to what I said or what Steve said?
I think Steve added a bunch of color there that makes total sense.
Great, fabulous. All right, so moving on for the third point and to break the now 1-1 tie, let's talk about reactive customer service, also known as troubleshooting. Steve, what would be your perspective on that?
Certainly. And I know I just mentioned this, so we know that I'm a firm believer in proactive service. However, I think being reactive is unavoidable in our business, and there will be times when it's necessary. Just like my wrestling days, right? You don't know exactly what your opponent's going to do, which is why I wasn't a state champion, because you can't always prepare. However, these unexpected.
What state were you in at the time? That's one thing too.
Oh, I was in Maryland, not exactly a powerhouse, but we were solid.
Still pretty good. That's a good wrestling state.
Ohio.
That's a good wrestling state. And I'm sorry, but and what weight did you wrestle at? I do have to ask.
Sure. My best weight was 103. I was the featherweight. And then I got tired of sucking weight senior year, so I wrestled 119.
Got it.
Which was more pleasant but less successful.
Prepare, Stacy. I'm going to ask how much you weighed in high school as well for your portion. So, so Steve,
I wrestled well.
Yeah. Good. I just had to know. I had to know. Okay, so you weren't a state champion, but talk about how talk about being reactive.
Sure, of course. So these situations can come up frequently. It could be an unexpected software bug, or customer hardware has failed, or maybe a more timely example would be a supply chain disruption that was unanticipated. So again, taking a proactive approach to being reactive and training the team and educating them so they understand how to deal with these scenarios will ensure top-notch customer service. And that is, of course, the core of all of our businesses. So again, I like educating my team. My take on troubleshooting in general is a pretty simple step-by-step approach. The very first thing is you have to remain professional at all times. That's crucial. And the next thing that I like to instill is demonstrating empathy. When the customer has called in, or your partner, they're likely frustrated, they're dealing with a problem. There could be possible financial implications. So recognizing that, letting them know that you are hearing them and that you're here to help them resolve the issue will de-escalate as well. And we need to de-escalate before you can tackle a problem, because as we know, clear heads do prevail. Then of course, we have to fix the problem. So identifying it through questions, finding the resolution, and then we send the customer on their way. They're busy, they are problem solvers like us, so they have the next problem to tackle. But that's not the very last step, because we do want to make sure that we are being excellent in our communication. So I do like to have a follow-up email which outlines the basic gist of the conversation, the issue that occurred, how it was resolved, and thanking the customer for being valuable and that we appreciate them. This does serve multiple ends. First, of course, good communication is key. It is always nice to be nice, and that does lead to lower attrition and increased sales in the future. But it also does have a secondary function as well, which can be nice, which is if you actually are training the customer or partner what the resolution was, there is a chance that if it's simple enough, they might not have to call back in the future if it happens again, which reduces call volume for the service team.
That's right. Don't just solve the initial problem. Make sure you're tilling the ground, so you're planting a seed to solve a future problem. So good info. Awesome. Stacy, what's your take on troubleshooting? What do you want to share?
Yeah, and what I heard there is through when you get to the core is listening and just turning your ears on and turning your mouth off. That is so critical. The old adage that we have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. But I'm gonna kind of go a different direction. That is actually very critical. It's also you have to in sales, we always have to remember our roles of what we're best at. I am not in customer service because that is not my greatest skill. However, what I can do is show that empathy when I take that phone call, and I can judge that situation whether I truly need to be involved. If I truly do not need to be involved, then what I need to do is I need to let those who have that skill set get involved. And what I need to do is listen and make sure they know they're not being passed off. I'm committed from what I said from the get-go, as I set expectations about what they're going to expect as far as those processes, because that's some things you should talk about in that sales process. What happens here, what happens here, what happens here. And I try to lay out, so when we get to this situation, you should contact these individuals. Do include me though, because if we're not on point or we're not as perfect as we would like to be, I can at least monitor that. So what I've done is I've taken a lot of that load off of me. So again, I can let those with the skill set handle that, but I can focus on what I'm best at. and allow that to happen. So kind of to bring it all around, it is absolutely listening. It's also knowing when you need to be involved and knowing when you need to get it over to those who can, but still stay in tune with it. That is critical, because that goes back to, they're going to stay with you if you can be empathetic with them.
I have to say, I really like what both of you said, and Stacy, that last point that you just said in terms of, you don't just shovel it off to somebody else, right? Like chucking a football when the blitz is coming and letting that person get tackled, right? You should keep checking in and making sure, like, I actually have a note, and I use this in customer service training. It's a note up on my wall, and it says actually care, right? Like step number one is actually care about the customer. And if you actually care about them, just naturally, you're going to stay in touch with it. So no, but both good points. I am going to give the point to Steve, just because he's given me the opportunity to hype a document that the RSPA's put together, and it's 9 steps, and it's how to win over an upset customer. And Steve kind of gave some of the overviews there, and Stacy, you tied in with it as well in terms of, first you have to listen, right? You've got to make sure you get a full understanding. You have to show that empathy all the way through. Then you have to act very quickly, and then do that detailed follow-up and make sure that the person is taken care of in that manner. And so once you get that formula, what you do is you can refer to those 9 steps instead of flipping out when somebody's yelling at you, right? Because you are going to come across that where somebody is just hot under the collar, they're in a tough situation. Instead of fighting emotion with emotion or paying attention more to your own emotion, if you go to this 9-step list, it's really going to help you solve the problem. If folks want that, just email me at jroddy, JRODDY, at gorspa.org, and I'm happy to send you the steps to win over an upset customer. It's been validated by many resellers and ISVs in this space. All right, we are at halftime, and Steve has a slight edge, a 2-to-1 advantage. Let's pause here during halftime to let our listeners and viewers know an RSPA membership has never been more valuable or more affordable. Annual memberships for VARs start at just $250 a year for dozens of high-value services, including RSPA Accelerate, which is the next generation of education for the retail IT channel. This online system offers continuous learning, training, and development opportunities anytime, anywhere, from any device. For more information on RSPA Academy EXCELerate, visit learn.gorspa.org. Also, we want to thank our sponsors who support the RSPA community and make this podcast and video series possible. Our platinum sponsors are Blue Star and Shift4 Payments. Our gold sponsors are Heartland and ScanSource. Finally, don't forget to save the date for 2 special RSPA events in 2022. I can't believe we're almost in 2022. Seems like we were just complaining about 2020. The first event is Inspire, the Retail IT Channel's premier executive conference, January 23rd through 26th at the Wyndham Grand in Clearwater Beach, Florida. And Retail Now 2022 is July 24th through 26th at the Gaylord Palms in Orlando. 2 events you don't want to miss, and it's a great opportunity for you to build your skills as a channel leader. To receive the benefits of an RSPA membership or RSPA sponsorship, email membership@gorspa.org. All right, I wasn't paying attention. Hopefully you guys got hydrated and stretched out and you're ready for the home stretch. I'm realizing since we're doing 6 periods, because they're not quarters, we could have done this hockey style and had just like 2 intermissions, but you know, we'll do that next time. We have 6 points.
Yeah.
And I'm a basketball guy anyway. You know, hockey is, you know, I've always said I'd rather watch a bad basketball game than a good hockey game. So I apologize to everybody who's a hockey fan. Not that I don't like it. It's just I love basketball.
There's a fight. It does make it interesting. Let's be honest.
That's right. Hey, and Stacy, I didn't ask you, what was your weight in high school, if you don't mind me asking?
So I stopped wrestling my sophomore year. I just wasn't very good. But I was wrestling right around the 115 mark as a freshman, but I gained a little bit of weight like everybody else. So by the time I was done, I was in the 140s. So, but little heavier.
I was in around the 140s as well, and I'm with you. I do not know how those wrestlers cut weight. Like, I ate what I wanted, and I cannot imagine trying to lose weight, you know, going down anywhere from where we were. So
yeah.
God bless you. All right, Stacy, you're leading us off, and we're heading down the home stretch here. We have about 20 minutes left. And so the next skill that we want to talk about channel leaders need is teamwork, right? And playing part of a team, building a team, enhancing that team. What advice, what guidance, what stories do you want to share with our audience on teamwork?
Yeah, I think it really comes down to skills, making sure that you have the people with the right skills in the right places, and assuring that when you have the issues that need to be addressed, or you're working on a presentation, that you've got the right individuals that are best at their job and deferring to their knowledge. Anything I've learned, I've picked up through curiosity or whatnot. Certainly, we were talking before we started about, being born. We're all, Steve brought up this point, which I'd never heard before, that we're all born afraid of spiders and snakes, I think was that. Outside of that, I didn't know anything. So everything I've learned are from those that are smarter than me. And I think you have to keep that mindset that you always have to depend on those and defer to those that are good at what they do, and let them do their job, because ultimately you're going to be all the better for it in the sum.
Right. If people wonder what we talk about before we hit record, it's checking everybody's lighting, and then we talk about spiders and snakes, and my new haircut. Steve, what do you want to talk about in terms of teamwork?
Absolutely. I'll start with saying what a spectacular response, Stacy. I love that. I took a lot away from that. The idea of division of roles, and that people with the right skills in the right place, letting them do their jobs as well. That's just a phenomenal measure of teamwork, and I really, really appreciate that. I will do a quick basketball quote. I know Jim is a big college basketball fan, but Michael Jordan, he was quoted saying that talent wins games, but intelligence and teamwork wins championships. And I think that's certainly true. I think that we all agree that a lone wolf approach to business is not really an effective strategy to grow an organization. And I read a book last year that I really enjoyed by Liz Weber called Something Needs to Change. And that book is really actually focused, at least what I take away from it was, it was really written for people planning to exit an organization from the CEO level down. But it also highlights the importance of building a structure that is stronger than any single individual within that organization, which is very important. That whole, I know the Baltimore Ravens, who are my home team, it's that next man up defense, right? That's very important. So in doing so, an effective team not only helps each other succeed, but they help each other become better as individuals within that organization. As leaders, it is our job to build a culture of teamwork, and that is crucial. And that means certain ideals need to be fostered. That can be very difficult in sales, where salespeople in general, by nature, are highly competitive, right? We all talked about being athletes here. We all want to win, and often salespeople are incentivized to compete with each other and outperform each other. But that doesn't mean that they can't exist in a strong sales environment with an overarching umbrella of a teamwork philosophy above that, right? Again, like Michael Jordan and the Bulls, he needed the rest of the team to win those championships. Oh, yes, sorry. Did you want to touch in?
No,
Oh.
I please finish.
Oh, it's okay. There's not much else. It's a tough river to navigate, I believe, because we are highly competitive. But when you hire high performers, something that you can do early on is right from the onset, instill those important company culture aspects and foster that during new hire training, set the expectation that organizations must, that the individuals within an organization have to share information, and that's important. Because again, a rising tide lifts all boats, and that is how a successful organization can be made up of successful individuals.
Wonderful. Stacy, was there something you wanted to add in there?
Yeah, I wanted to tag on that, and I noticed there's a book on your bookshelf called The Walk-On Method. In my in my review, I think one of the core pieces when you talk about teamwork is the walk-on. And after reading the book, it really put it into perspective, because I never really, my thought is always I was never walking, but a walk-on really in my mind was there to compete for a starting job. And what you realize is that it's okay. A lot of these guys' mindsets is, you know what, I'm here. Number one, there's certainly an interest that I get to, have that on my resume or whatnot. But you have that servant piece, and I know we'll talk about servant leadership, about saying, hey, look, this is my role. My role is to scout, because that's what I'm really good at. I'm not the best shooter. I'm not the best guard. I'm a scout, and I'm really good. I'm better than anybody else that does that. That is my role, and that's how we're going to win together. I'll say one other thing, and one tip that I've incorporated that I picked up long ago and it's genuine, is when I'm asking for something from somebody who does what I don't do and has a better skill, I want them to know that, hey, your experience here or your expertise can really help me. Can you lend your expertise to this particular problem that I need to solve? And I'm letting them know that you're extremely valued. Certainly, I can probably do it more than I do. And I think, number one, it's going to help you get what you want, to help everybody get ultimately what they want, which is a team win. But it's also letting them know how valuable they are, just because we should do that in general.
For sure. So I'm going to give the point to Stacy. Both of you made good points, and it's not because Stacy mentioned my book, The Walk-On Method to Career Success, on sale. Yeah, oh, that's yours? I didn't know you wrote the on sale now at Amazon.com, $14.99. Get your credit cards ready. It's because what you mentioned is, and there's two things. And again, it's not that I disagree with anything that you said, Steve, but what I see some organizations do, some leaders do, is they're focusing on how do we do things as a team, how do we do this team thing, and all this, trying to, I don't want to say game the system, but try to create all these systems around it. But it really comes down to, if you recruit and retain and train the right kind of person, a lot of that teamwork stuff is going to happen naturally. Not all of it, but it's not as heavy lifting if you get the right people. And so Kirby Smart, head coach of University of Georgia, as we record this, undefeated, ranked #1 in the country, he said no coach can out-coach recruiting. And that's how I kind of think about it, in terms of like no manager can manage the wrong person, right? You've got to make sure you have the right people and they help build the right environment. Those are the things that you need to do. So you got to start with, I think you said, Stacy, get the right people who have the right skills, the right attitude, and put them in the right places. All right, Steve, one thing, I'm realizing this Battle of Channel Stars is kind of like tennis. Like, each of you have held serve because you answer the question first. And so the person who answers first, it's almost like you break serve if you score a point on them. So, all right, Steve, the added pressure is on you. This is point number 5, your last opportunity to serve and go first, about being a lifelong leader. And I alluded to that in the introduction. Can you talk about the importance of that, both personally and how it applies to other people, please?
Sure, and I'll try to bring the Pete Sampras serve on this this response.
Very good, great reference.
Being a lifelong learner, something I truly am passionate about is education. It has served me well throughout my career, and education, I have found, is one of several keys to being successful, not just in your career, but in life. If you're part of a dynamic industry like POS or merchant services, you know that things are changing constantly. It's always evolving. There's always something new coming down the road. And even if you've been in the industry for a long time, you can't know everything, which is why you have to continually experience and learn more things. I like to take Bill Gates as a good example. And I am no Bill Gates by any means, but he reads approximately 50 books a year, which is quite a lot. I, on the other hand, taking that education approach, I try to learn at least 1 hour a day or 5 hours a week, which has been very, very helpful. And whether that's watching podcasts or listening to them, webinars, engaging with other industry professionals, or just reading industry articles, that can really help shape your knowledge within a career. And I certainly love doing it. Education has helped me close more business, which I think is important for everyone on our channel, but also meet interesting people and have more engaging conversations. So it certainly helps me keep up with the latest industries, and that is why I believe being a lifelong learner is so important.
Great, thank you. Stacy, your return serve, if Sampras, he hit one, smoked one, 130 miles an hour on the line, how do you return it?
That one went right through my my racket.
You were holding a baseball bat, so let's see what happens.
I'm a rock music fan, and I heard Jason Newsted, who was the bassist for the band Metallica, on their Behind the Music years ago, and he said when he toured with Guns N' Roses that he learned what to do and what not to do. And what I gather from that is there's a lesson in everything. In order to gather those lessons, you have to commit to that reading and whatnot. I try to keep a book by my desk. I'm not always successful at picking that book up every night. If nothing else, you can hopefully you're subscribing to trade magazines that are part of your business. Also, you're picking up some book. Obviously, that's relative to your industry, but you also too you have to kind of refresh too. And watch your sports or whatnot, and keep a fresh, clean mind. So that way, when you do dig in, you're going hard for that 30 minutes or hour, whatever it is. But I do agree. I'm a huge fan of the Habits of Success, Stephen Covey, and the Sharpening the Saw is probably what I feel is most relevant in all of those. Making sure. I mean, so many things to say. Nobody watching this needs to be. Yeah.
What is sharpening the saw for those who don't know that term?
Yeah, so always educating yourself, always staying smart with your skills, and that's my interpretation of that anyway. Yeah. And whether it's getting in your car, if you have a 30-minute drive, putting on a podcast, whether again you got a book by your nightstand. And again, I don't think anybody listening to this doubts that, because obviously they're paying attention here, and hopefully there's a nugget or two that comes from all of this. And maybe we're not teaching anything new, but again, whether you're learning what to do or what not to do, you're learning something.
Yep, and the literal version of sharpen the saw is you're chopping down a tree. Spend a lot of time sharpening your saw first before you go chopping down the tree. Like it's two people in a competition, one guy just grabs the axe and just starts whacking away at it. The other person spends time sharpening the saw and they go quickly through the tree. So again, both very good points. I'm going to give that to Stacy. So Stacy breaks serve, and the reason is you brought up a point that I've never really articulated, but I thought about a lot, where lifelong learning isn't just about what you should do, it's that what you shouldn't do. And if you pay attention to, like Enron to me is a great example in terms of they were always front and center, and they were the smartest guys in the room, and they were arrogant, and you just saw them completely collapse. So make sure when you're seeing things, it doesn't always have to be the best practice. You can find out things you just don't want to do and you want to avoid. So, all right. So 3-2. So Steve, not to keep putting the pressure on you, but pressure's on. See if you can return serve here. Stacy, The last topic is servant leadership. What say you?
I think that's, for me, it sums up just setting the example and being an example. I don't know that there's any other way to say it than as succinctly as that. And just assuring, again, it goes back to some things we already talked about, addressing people respectfully, even making sure they know how valued they are with their expertise set. So in the communication, sometimes it can be easy. We all know it can be easy when you're faced with something and maybe somebody goofed up somewhere to externalize that. Obviously, you can't do that in a way that's going to compromise your position. But sometimes it can be easy to fire off that email that doesn't look as nice as what it can be. So sometimes you just need to kind of rethink about how you're doing it. And again, it comes back to that example. How would you want to be responded to, and how do you fit? And remembering their position and what they do. So again, just as succinctly as this, just example.
Got it. Thank you. Steve, servant leadership, what's your take?
Sure. So what a phenomenal response again by Stacy. The setting of the example is such a crucial point for any leader within the business and the industry. When I think of servant leadership, to me, it's the idea of sharing power and helping others develop and perform as highly as possible, right? And that's a concept I can certainly get behind. One of my goals as a leader has been to raise those around me so they too can become leaders and help those around them rise and succeed. I fully admit this is a self-serving goal. Because the more empowered a person is, an employee, the more likely they're going to make good, thoughtful decisions, which is going to result in better customer satisfaction, increased retention, happier customers, more effective communication, and a better overall sales organization. It will literally make our lives easier. Such improvements also directly correlate to increased revenue. Not to mention, empowering your team also frees up your own time, which is very nice because they are able to make these good, critical thinking, thought-provoking, problem-solving decisions. And that kind of allows you to use that extra time to focus on other things, which can be a path to growth and success. I'm reminded of another book. I do like to always relate to what means something to me, and that's The 1 Minute Manager, which is a really easy read. And if you haven't read it out there, take a day. It's really short and it's really worth reading. In that book,
it's a book you literally can get through in a day, even if you're not some voracious reader. 100%.
That's right. And I'm a very slow reader. I like to absorb, and I knocked that thing up pretty quickly. What I really liked is in that book, the fictitious manager has created a culture in which he is elevating his employees within the company to make their own decisions and to essentially self-manage. As a result of that, those employees are more likely to be elevated within the organization, which is really wonderful at a higher rate than other supervisors within that same business. And it's because he's empowered them to make decisions through problem solving and critical thinking. So I think the ultimate goal of every leader within the channel is to build up our team, set them up for success, and to share power so that they can be empowered to make good decisions.
Great. All right. So the final point of the match, I'm going to give it to Steve, because Steve, I liked how you said share power and empower. That's really what it comes down to. A lot of people talk about being a servant leader, but are you actually sharing that power? Are you actually teaching people to get better? And empower, I always say, don't do ignorant empowerment where you're like, here, you're in charge of this, and they're going to go off and fail. Are you spending time with the person to teach them and really raise them and lift them up? So, all right. So, gentlemen, we are going to overtime, but before we do that, we're going to
Jim,
recap
can I make
this.
one point?
Yeah, go ahead, Stacy.
So you know how when the pitcher throws the ball and the batter's right there and he just blazes the fastball right to the and the guy puts his head down and walks to the dugout. That's what that just felt like. So, yeah. So very well. I like the 1 minute manager reference. Very much so.
That was my Nolan Ryan 2 fingers fastball there. So.
Very good. I never thought Pete Sampras, Nolan Ryan, and spiders would be part of this podcast, and we're asking you guys about your weight, but here we are. So, all right, before we go to overtime, let's recap the 6 key skills. Again, to be a channel leader, an effective channel leader: 1, sales and business development; 2, customer service, meaning proactive; 3, troubleshooting, which is reactive customer service; 4, teamwork; 5, a lifelong learner; and 6 is servant leadership. If you are good at those 6 skills, you are going to be a successful leader in our industry. All right, so let's go to overtime and decide who's going to get the gold and who's going to get the silver. What I'm going to do is share a business-related quote, and you have to guess it from 5 options of who said it. Okay, and so Steve is going to get to answer first for this first question because he won the first point of the match. All right, I'm going to read the quote, and then I'm going to give you the 5 options, and Steve, you say first who you believe said it, and then Stacy, you have to guess differently because you can't just keep guessing the same, right? We'd be here all night. So,
Yeah.
All right, here we go. So the quote is, "We must not only listen, we must do something to give the client the experience of having been listened to." And I think both of you alluded to that. All right, so was that said by Chip and Dan Heath in their book Decisive? Was it Dale Carnegie in How to Win Friends and Influence People? Was it Ken Blanchard and Sheldon Bowles in Raving Fans? Was it David Maister in The Trusted Advisor? Or is this me on an ego trip in my book, The Walk-On Method to Career and Business Success? So again, we must not only listen, we must do something to give the client the experience of having been listened to. Again, is it the Heath brothers, Carnegie, Bowles and Blanchard, Maister, or me? Steve.
Going to try to use my critical thinking skills, and I scratched off a few. So I've got what I believe is a 30% or 50% chance. So I'm going to go with Blanchard.
Going with Ken Blanchard and Sheldon Bowles and Raving Fans. Stacy, who do you think said this quote?
If you could please give me the books
Sure.
again.
Decisive, How to Win Friends and Influence People, Raving Fans, but that was already taken, The Trusted Advisor, and The Walk-On Method.
I'm going to go with Trusted Advisor.
One of you is correct.
The Trusted Advisor was my second choice.
And Stacy was correct. It is in The Trusted Advisor, David Maister. It is the book that I highly recommend when I'm doing any sort of customer service training. The Trusted Advisor is absolutely a phenomenal book that we have. So, well, gentlemen, thank you very much. So the final score, Stacy 4, Steve 3 in overtime. Stacy is the gold medalist. Steve is a silver medalist. Thank you both for playing Battle of the Channel Stars. So Stacy, you get the final word, final thoughts before we go. This is your opportunity to react or gloat however you want.
Yeah, I really appreciate everybody in the RSPA. It is a wonderful community. There are not many communities like this for such a niche business that we're all in. It's such good friendships and good connections that can be made. It all starts at the top with John Kirk. Jim, I appreciate you having us on. Very much fun. Hopefully, we've imparted what to know or what to not take away from all of this, and look forward to doing it again next time.
Wonderful. Thank you guys very much. And again, to our listeners and our viewers, we hope you enjoyed today's discussion and fierce competition. If you did, be sure to subscribe to the RSPA YouTube channel and the Trusted Advisor podcast so you never miss an episode. We'd also appreciate it if you'd rate us wherever you find your favorite podcast. My personal philosophy, the more stars, the better. And if you'd like to learn more best practices for VARs and ISVs in the retail technology industry, check out the RSPA blog. You can find it at gorspa.org and then clicking on RSPA blog. Before we go, big thanks again to Stacy, Carrillo, our gold medalist, to Steve Silverman, our silver medalist, for sharing their wisdom with us today. Gentlemen, again, anybody who's in the RSPA is a winner. You guys did a phenomenal job today. Thank you so much. Thanks also to RSPA Marketing Manager Chris Arnold for his production work, Joseph McDade for our music, and last but not least, thanks so much to you for listening. Our goal at the RSPA is to accelerate the success of our members in the point-of-sale ecosystem by providing knowledge and connections. For more information, visit our website at gorspa.org. Thanks for listening, and goodbye, everybody.